Throne and Liberty recently came out with a new loot distribution rules. They let us know today. So welcome to Battle Risk Gaming. In this video, I'm just going to go over how loot distribution works here in Throne and Liberty. And as you can see, it is 11:05 today. Okay, so we've got Conquer Devious Field Bosses. So they talk about two different ways, or two different foundational items we got to talk about first. So first is contribution. It's earned by doing damage against enemy and healing friendly players in battle while an enemy is active, whether they're in your party or not. And this is both in and out of your party while doing guild level events, also known as field bosses. When you get event items, loot is dropped during dynamic events that is collected to turn in for event progress. For example, if you get wolf tails in the wolf hunting event, so the more you get, the better your overall rewards are going to be. It's like a competition real time. Okay, and then you've got general activities here. So this is talking about open world farming, abyss dungeon farming, quests, contracts, dynamic events, co-op dungeons, excluding final reward chest. Applicable enemies include normals, elites, and party elites. So the distribution rules are: if you kill an enemy, loot is assigned to the player whoever first struck the enemy. So that's how contribution works. So in this case, the first person to hit gets contribution unless you're in a party. So that's if you're running solo. So if you notice when you're running in game, enemy names will gray out when somebody else hits it. That is contribution. That's what it's talking about. And then if you're in a group, the loot is assigned to the player's party instead. So in this case, everyone in the group has equal chance across all party members. The only exception is that party members that don't have contribution, so that haven't hit an enemy and are outside of the range, which it doesn't really say what that range is, don't get a drop from that specific enemy or that little group of enemies if they're too far away. And all items will be evenly distributed between the group. So if you have 10 items dropped and there are 5 people in your group, every player should receive 2 items. If you have 10 items drop and there are 4 people in your group, then one person will randomly be selected to receive 1 extra drop. And then Solent experience is distributed evenly. When you're looking at peace mode bosses and guild raids, the applicable enemies are considered field bosses and arch bosses. So the distribution rules are as follows. When a peace mode field boss dies, all players are sorted by individual player contribution. So the more damage you do or the more healing you do, the better off you're going to be, especially if you're doing highest DPS. The overall contribution does not play a role for peace mode bosses and guild raids, but you must meet a minimum contribution to even be eligible to receive loot from the boss in the first place. So it doesn't really, again, specify what that minimum contribution is. It could be that you are only having to do, a millionth of a percent, 10,000 damage or something like that. I don't know. Or it could be that you have to do 1% of the boss's health. Either way, if you have to do, say the boss has, 1 million health and it's 1%, that's only 10,000 damage. Most people can pull that off. But if you're looking at, and if it's lower, even better. But if you're looking at, you have to do a minimum of like 3% to even be considered, then you're kind of out of luck. And there's almost no point in doing the field boss with your guild because you're not going to get a drop. So contribution drops. You'll still get a random drop, but you won't get contribution drops. So those are the 2 types of drops that come from peace mode bosses. Each item on contribution is distributed based on chance according to your contribution, the amount of damage that you put out. So if you put out 3% of the boss's damage, you're going to get 3% contribution on that boss. Random drops. Each item is randomly provided only to remaining players who did not receive one of the contribution drops. Single player is only eligible to receive one of these drops. In other words, a single player cannot receive more than 1 epic equipment from a single boss encounter. I guess there's been some glitches about that lately where people have gotten multiple epics, but I think they're trying to fix that bug, or they've already fixed it. So, and then again, soul and experience are distributed evenly. So let's take a look at their example here. Say you have a contribution drop of potential of a sword, a mask, and 1,000 solent. And there's a potential of a random drop that's going to be a boots. So if you've met the minimum contribution requirement, like they said, if your contribution was 3% of the total contribution, you would have a 3% chance of acquiring either the sword or the mask, the epic drop. All players that met the minimum contribution requirement would have equal chance to acquire the boots, regardless of their total contribution. Any player who receives epic equipment is unable to attain a second piece of epic equipment from the same boss. Okay, let's talk about conflict mode, because it's not the same as peace mode. So loot is assigned in 2 stages. First, it's assigned to a guild, and then it's assigned to players within that guild. So the guild that has the highest damage overall on a boss will get the best drops, and then within that even further, the player in that guild that has the highest damage output / healing will get the highest chance of the best drops. So guilds, so it says when a field boss dies during conflict mode, a guild's contribution is calculated as the sum of the individual contribution for each player in the guild who participated in that fight. Guilds are then sorted based on contribution. Guilds must meet a minimum contribution to even be eligible to receive loot from the boss. So if you're in a small guild, you gotta ramp up if you're gonna go against other guilds in conflict mode. Loot items are distributed. Get that out of the way real quick, sorry. Doing this on my phone. Loot items are distributed based on chance according to guild contribution. So unlike peace mode bosses, dying to an enemy or another player during a conflict mode results in the player losing 70% of your individual contribution, meaning that the guild's total contribution at the end of the match is also reduced. Once your guild has been assigned an item, all participating players within the guild have equal chance to obtain the item. Okay, so I got that part a little bit wrong. So basically, when doing PvP version of these bosses, these field bosses and arch bosses, if you kill other players from other guilds, you take away their chance of getting good loot, and your guild has better loot. So there you go. Here's an example. 1 sword, 1 mask, 1,000 solent. If player A, B, and C had 10%, 15%, and 20% in that order, and all belong to the same guild, then the total contribution would be 45% from that guild, meaning they would have 45% to chance to acquire sword and mask if they participated in the fight. And if the guild successfully acquired the mask, then players A, B, and C would each have a mask, have an equal chance to receive the mask, claim the throne in the castle siege so that you can never miss out on valuable loot. So I see a couple of issues with this loot distribution. Number one, where does it leave the tanks? Our tanks don't have some kind of damage absorption rate loot drop. If they absorb a certain amount of damage, they're going to get, great drops. We've got something for healers. We've got something for DPS in the form of contribution, but nothing for tanks. So there's really almost no reward for you if you're a tank. And then again, if you're on the low end of DPS, say you're just gearing up, where does this leave you? I mean, you're probably not going to be outputting the highest DPS. So this is where the pay-to-win aspect of this game really shines through. If you can go through onto the auction house and buy with real money the best items that people are selling there that they farmed for, and they're earning a bunch of lucent off of, then you can get to the point where you're earning better gear, and then you could sell it on the auction house and have other people buy it, because there's a disparity. You are highest level geared, you're doing the most damage, it does make a difference. And then you've got people who are in the process of gearing up. Maybe you still got some blues. Hopefully if you're level getting past into the end game and you're trying to do your best to get rid of all of your greens, but some people are having a lot of blue and green by the time they get to level 50, and they're trying to farm for their purple drops, your epic drops, and you're, doing the small group dungeon activities in order to get some kind of epic drops, but then you're here to get the best end game loot, the meta stuff. You're having to be already the best. And so this is where it's kind of an issue. And then, if you are not, for the PvP side of the house, if you're not in a big giant guild that's really heavily PvP focused, and you go out and you're in a smaller guild and you try to do, damage against a boss out there, one of the field bosses or arch bosses, and then your guild is constantly getting ganked by other guilds, you're gonna lose your chance on epic gear. So you've got this issue where you've got people at the top already who have the best gear, and they're in giant guilds. They're going to run the auction house, set all of the prices, and maybe this is the Throne and Liberty's, maybe this is their point. Maybe they want you to go buy real money to shop their auction house instead of trying to be free to play and farm for the gear yourself. So if you're free to play like I am, this is kind of worrisome, but maybe they'll change some of the loot distribution rules in the future to where it's a little bit more fair. Again, tanks and small guilds, you're kind of at a big disparity, and I feel bad for you guys. I'm currently in a small guild, so I'm going to feel the pain. So let me know what you think of this information in the comments below, and if you have a suggestion on how they should change the loot drops to make it more fair. I mean, if you even think about it, there's not even a cumulative pity drop. There's no like, hey, by the way, you haven't gotten loot for the last 15 times you farmed this boss, so here you go, here's a pity drop, your chance of gaining loot has increased. No, there's nothing like that. You just gotta be the best. And this is also going to, I foresee this hurting the weapon system that they're trying to build. They want you to be flexible with the weapons that you equip, right? They want to be balanced, but this is going to cause people to chase a meta more than anything else because they can't get loot. So they're going to say, okay, what's the absolute max DPS I can put out? That's what I'm going to chase. And then you're going to run into issues where nobody wants to tank. Very few people want to heal. That's already a problem in MMOs, or in general. You're always going to have a hard time getting tanks and healers, but now it's going to make that even worse, and you're going to have nothing but DPS going in and trying to do fights, and everybody's going to have a harder time in the long run, overall, grand scheme of things, because nobody wants to tank, only a few people want to heal, and you're only going to have most people focused on DPS. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you think of this in the comments below. This is Battle Risk Gaming. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.